How Elizabeth Warren rose from a nearly broke Midwestern upbringing to a top Democratic presidential candidate, and Wall Street's worst enemy. Elizabeth Warren was born Elizabeth Herring in Norman, Oklahoma on June 12, 1949. Growing up, her family called her Betsy. Warren had 3 older brothers, all of whom later served in the military. A brilliant student, Warren skipped the 6th grade. And the family later moved to Oklahoma City so she could attend a better school. In the 1960s, Warren's father suffered a heart attack and lost his job. Warren credits her mother Pauline's decision to get a job at Sears with rescuing her family from financial ruin. Warren said, "That minimum wage job saved our home, and my mother saved our family." By the age of 16, Warren was the state debate champion and graduating high school. She enrolled at George Washington University that same year on a debate scholarship and had a desire to become a teacher. Warren dropped out of GW during her sophomore year to marry her high school boyfriend. She later graduated from the University of Houston, moved to New Jersey and gave birth to her first daughter Amelia in 1971. In 1980, Warren married her second husband, Harvard Law School professor Bruce Mann. After earning her law degree, Warren went on to teach law at the University of Pennsylvania and Harvard Law School among other schools. Warren spent much of her academic career researching why Americans filed for bankruptcy. She found most financial victims were middle-class families who had faced a devastating personal event, job loss, divorce, or health problems. Her research overturned traditional ideas of who experienced financial hardship and why. Lawmakers in Washington began relying on Warren's financial expertise and she traveled there to testify on various bills. During the 2008 financial crisis, she was appointed to head the panel overseeing the $700 billion bailout fund, known as the Troubled Assets Relief Program. As head of the bailout fund, she criticized Obama's Treasury Secretary Timothy Geithner for not doing more for small businesses and homeowners impacted by the financial crisis. In his memoir, Geithner said Warren's oversight hearings resembled made-for-YouTube inquisitions rather than serious inquiries. The financial crisis deepened Warren's view that there needed to be a federal agency charged with protecting consumers from predatory lending and other fraudulent practices. Then-President Obama appointed her to help set up the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau in September 2010. When Obama passed her over to lead the CFPB, Warren returned to Massachusetts to run for the Senate against a Republican incumbent in 2012. Her opponent lambasted her elitist attitude and called her anti-free enterprise. But Warren came from behind to win 54% of the vote, becoming the first female U.S. Senator from Massachusetts. Warren's time in the Senate cemented her image as a policy wonk. She continued pushing for greater transparency from Wall Street and introduced a bill on student loan reform. She also passed bipartisan bills that have become law, including one that reduced the amount of unused prescription drugs and another that increased returns on investment for the retirement accounts of federal workers. In one memorable hearing, Warren called Wells Fargo CEO John Stumpf gutless for his handling of a fake bank account scandal. She also demanded Stumpf's resignation. Warren briefly considered a 2016 presidential run before opting out. In the Democratic primary, she supported former Secretary of State Hillary over Senator Bernie Sanders. Warren later delivered the keynote address at the 2016 Democratic National Convention. During the Trump presidency, Warren has fiercely opposed many of the administration's policies on immigration, healthcare and the economy. But she's also been critical of the Democratic Party's approach, saying, "Far too often, Democrats have been unwilling to get out there and fight." Last year, Warren was criticized for taking a DNA test to prove she had distant Native American ancestry. She apologized, and went on to win re-election in the Senate. Warren formally announced her candidacy in February. She called for fundamental change for working people and blasted the Trump administration as the most corrupt in living memory. Shortly after, she promised to not hold private fundraisers with wealthy donors or accept money from lobbyists. Warren is campaigning on a stream of policy ideas that would remake the American economy. She's rolled out over 20 detailed policy proposals on taxes, student loans and universal child care, many of them on Medium. Her campaign has embraced the slogan, "I have a plan for that." To pay for her sweeping plans, Warren proposed a wealth tax of 2% on assets worth $50 million or more on the top 0.1% of American households. 2 UC. Berkeley economists estimated it would generate $2.75 trillion in revenue over a decade, though some experts say those figures are optimistic. Polls show a majority of people support the idea, including half of Republicans. Defending her wealth tax, Warren says the wealthy have a responsibility to the middle class. Remember, you built that fortune in America, where the rest of us helped pay for the education of all your employees, where the rest of us helped pay for the roads and the bridges so you could get your goods to market, where the rest of us helped pay for the police and the firefighters who were there to keep you safe. Warren steadily rose in the polls through the spring, propelled by a stream of policy plans that have forced her rivals to try and keep up. It's also helped Warren stay in the news and increase her fundraising. Her campaign raised just over $25 million in the first 2 quarters of 2019. Warren essentially laid out her campaign's organizing principles in her opening statement of the first Democratic primary debate in June: "When you've got a government, when you've got an economy that does great for those with money and isn't doing great for everyone else, that is corruption, pure and simple. We need to call it out. We need to attack it head-on, and we need to make structural change." Warren's momentum continued after the first debate, and she cemented her position in the top tier of candidates with strong fundraising. People have turned out in droves to hear the Massachusetts senator pledge government initiatives in housing, education and the economy. At the July Democratic primary debate, Warren and Sanders tag-teamed against moderates like John Delaney on stage to defend their progressive ideas. She also doubled down on her universal health care views, saying, "I'm with Bernie on Medicare for all." Warren has made it a point to take selfies with her supporters, viewing it as a way to connect with voters as she builds a grassroots movement. Selfie lines are common at her campaign stops, and her campaign estimates she's taken over 38,000 pictures so far. Warren emerged largely unscathed after the September Democratic primary debate, the first time she shared a stage with the race's frontrunner, former Vice President Joe Biden. He slammed her on supporting Medicare for all, but Warren delivered forceful defenses of her progressive policies. As Warren's candidacy gathered steam, financial titans and corporate leaders have sounded the alarm about her economic plans. Billionaire investor Leon Cooperman predicted the stock market would plunge 25% if Warren became president. Democratic primary rivals criticized Warren for refusing to elaborate on whether her Medicare for All plan would hit the middle class with new taxes. Pete Buttigieg said at the October debate, "Your signature, Senator, is to have a plan for everything, except this." Warren rolled out her plan to pay for Medicare for all, estimating it would cost $20.5 trillion. It relies on redirecting employer and state spending onto the federal budget and reining in wasteful spending. Some economists have criticized her ambitious revenue and spending targets. Warren's Medicare for All funding plan became target of an Saturday Night Live sketch satirizing the debate around her sweeping proposal.